I suppose the high water mark of my youth in Columbus, Ohio, was the night the bed fell on my father. It happened then that my father had decided to sleep in the attic one night. To be away where he could think. My mother opposed the notion strongly because she said the old wooden bed up there was unsafe. It was wobbly, and the heavy headboard would crash down on Father's head in the case the bed fell and kill him. There was no dissuading him, however, and at 10:15, he closed the attic door behind him and went up the narrow, twisting stairs. We later heard ominous creakings as he crawled into bed. Grandfather, who usually slept in the attic bed when he was with us, had disappeared some days before. We had visiting at this time a nervous first cousin of mine named Briggs Beale, who believed that he was likely to cease breathing when he was asleep. It was his feeling that if he were not awakened every hour during the night, he might die of suffocation. He had been accustomed to setting an alarm clock to ring at intervals until morning, but I persuaded him to abandon this. He slept in my room. And this is Thurber's room right here. He slept in my room, and I told him I was such a light sleeper that if anyone quit breathing in the same room with me, I would wake instantly. He tested me the first night, which I had suspected he would, by holding his breath after my regular breathing convinced him that I was asleep. I was not asleep, however, and I called to him. This seemed to allay his fears a little, but he took the precaution of putting a glass of spirits of camphor on a little table at the head of his bed. In case I didn't arouse him until he was almost gone, he said, he would sniff the camphor, a powerful reviver. Briggs was not the only member in this family who had his crutches. Old Aunt Melissa Beale, who could whistle like a man with 3 fingers in her mouth, suffered under the premonition that she was destined to die on South High Street because she had been born on South High Street and married on South High Street. Then there was Aunt Sarah Schoff, who never went to bed at night without the fear that a burglar was going to get in and blow chloroform under her door through a tube. To avert this calamity, for she was in greater dread of anesthetics and of losing her household goods, she always piled her money, silverware, and other valuables in a neat sack just outside her bedroom with a note reading, "This is all I have. Please take it and do not use your chloroform, as this is all I have." Aunt Gracie Schoff also had a burglar phobia, but she met it with more fortitude. She was confident that burglars had been getting into her house every night for 40 years. The fact that she never missed anything was to her no proof to the contrary. She always claimed that she scared them off before they could take anything by throwing shoes down the hallway. When she went to bed, she piled where she could get them handily all the shoes that were about her house. 5 minutes after she turned off the light, she would sit up in bed and say, "Heart!" Her husband, who had learned to ignore the whole situation as long ago as 1903, would either be sound asleep or pretend to be sound asleep. And in either case, he would not respond to her tugging and pulling, so that she presently would arise, tiptoe to the door, open it slightly, and heave the shoe down the hall in one direction, and its mate down the hall in the other direction. And some nights she threw them all, some nights only a couple of pair. I'm straying from the remarkable incident that took place the night the bed fell on Father. By midnight, we were all in bed. The layout of the rooms and the disposition of their occupants is important to understanding what later occurred. In the front room upstairs, just under Father's attic bedroom, were my mother and my brother Herman, who sometimes, my mother and my brother Herman, who sometimes sang in his sleep, usually Marching Through Georgia or Onward Christian Soldiers. Briggs Beale and myself were in a room adjoining this one. So my brother Roy was in a room across the hall from ours. So this time, Briggs Beale and James Thurber were here. And then my brother Roy was in a room across the hall. Our bull terrier, Rex, slept in the hall. My bed was an army cot, one of these affairs which are made wide enough to sleep on comfortably only by putting up flattened at the middle section, the two sides which ordinarily hung down like sideboards on the drawleaf table. When these sides are up, it's perilous to roll too far to the edge, for then the cot is likely to tip completely over, bringing the whole bed down on top of one with a tremendous banging crash. This, in fact, is precisely what happened about 2 o'clock in the morning. It was my mother who, recalling the scene later, first referred to it as the night the bed fell on your father. Always a deep sleeper, slow to rouse, I had lied to Briggs. I was first conscious of what had happened when the iron cot rolled over the floor and toppled over on me. It left me still warmly bundled up and unhurt, for the bed rested above me like a canopy. Hence I didn't wake up, and only reached the edge of consciousness and then went back. The racket, however, instantly awakened my mother in the next room, who came to the immediate conclusion that her worst dread had been realized, and the big wooden bed upstairs had fallen on father. She therefore screamed, "Let's go to your poor father!" It was this shout, rather than the noise of my cot falling, that awakened Herman in the same room with her. He thought that mother had, for some reason, become hysterical, and "You're all right, Mother," he shouted, trying to calm her, okay? They exchanged shout for perhaps 10 seconds. "Let's go to your poor father!" "You're all right," okay? That woke up Briggs. By this time, I was conscious of what was going on in a vague way, but did not realize that I was under my bed instead of on it. Briggs, awakening in the middle of the night, with loud shouts of fear and apprehension, came to the quick conclusion that he was suffocating and that we were all trying to bring him out of it. And with a low moan, he grasped the lamp of camphor at the head of his bed, and instead of sniffing it, he poured it over himself. The room reeked of camphor. Choked Briggs like a drowning man, for he almost succeeded in stopping his breath under the deluge of pungent spirits. He leapt out of bed and groped toward the open window, but came up against one that was closed. So with his hand he beat against the glass, and I could hear it crash and tinkle in the alleyway below. It was at this juncture that I, trying to get up, had the uncanny sensation of feeling my bed above me, foggy with sleep. I now suspected in my turn that the whole uproar must be unheard of to rescue me, extricate me from what must be an unheard of perilous situation. "Get me out of this," I bawled. "Get me out." I thought it had been nightmarish belief that I was entombed in a mine. "Moog," gasped Briggs, floundering in his camphor. By this time, my mother, still shouting, pursued by Herman, still shouting, was trying to open the door to the attic in order to get my father's body out of the wreckage. And the door was stuck, however, and wouldn't yield. Her frantic pulls only added to the general banging and confusion. Roy and the dog were now up, one shouting question, the other one barking, "Bark, bark, bark, bark." So father, furthest away and sound asleep and all, had by this time been awakened by the battering on the attic door. He decided the house was on fire. I'm coming," he wailed in a slow, sleepy voice. It took him many minutes to regain full consciousness. My mother, still believing he was caught under bed, detected in his "I'm coming" the mournful, resigned note of one prepared to meet his maker. "She's dying! He's dying!" she shouted. "I'm all right," Briggs yelled to reassure. "I'm all right." He still believed. And it was his closeness to death that was worrying Mother. I found at last the light switch in my room, unlocked the door, and Briggs and I joined the others at the attic door. The dog, who never did like Briggs, jumped for him, assuming he was the culprit of whatever was going on, and Roy had to throw Rex and hold him. We could hear Father crawling out of bed upstairs. Roy pulled the attic door open with a mighty jerk, and Father came down the stairs, sleepy and irritable, but safe and sound. My mother began to weep when she saw him. Rex began to howl. "What in the name of God is going on here?" asked Father. The situation was finally put together like a gigantic jigsaw puzzle. Father caught a cold from prowling around in his bare feet, but there were no other bad results. "I'm glad," said Mother, who always looked on the bright side of things, "that your grandfather wasn't here."